The text message glowed on my screen like a slap to the face. "Maybe it's better if you sit this one out, Becca. The family needs a drama-free vacation for once." I stared at my brother Daniel's words, reading them over and over as the Seattle rain pelted against my apartment windows. 3 months of planning, coordinating schedules, and I was being uninvited from our annual family trip to Pine Crest Resort just 5 days before departure. I placed my phone face down on my desk, my hands trembling slightly. The Mitchell family vacation had been a tradition for 15 years, ever since I was in high school. Dad would book the same cluster of cabins at Pine Crest. We'd spend mornings hiking, afternoons by the lake, and evenings around the massive stone fireplace sharing stories and making plans. It wasn't always perfect, but it was ours. Until now, apparently. Difficult, they called me. Too intense. Always making things complicated. Last year's crime, apparently unforgivable, was suggesting we try a different restaurant instead of eating at the resort's overpriced mediocre summit every single night. The year before, I'd committed the sin of bringing my laptop to finish an urgent project during one afternoon. Small disagreements magnified through my family's distorted lens into evidence that I was the perpetual problem. The rain intensified, outside, matching my darkening mood. I'm not the family troublemaker. I'm the only one who ever suggests anything different, who pushes back when my parents steamroll everyone with their plans. The only one who built something of her own instead of staying safely within the family's expectations. My phone buzzed again. Daniel. "Mom and Dad think it's for the best. Sophia agrees. We all need a break from the tension." A unified front. How convenient. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I picked up my phone, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. I could fight this, send a passionate defense, remind them I'd already requested the time off, that I'd been looking forward to seeing my niece and nephew. But the familiar exhaustion of being the family scapegoat settled over me like a heavy blanket. "Fine. Enjoy Pine Crest," I typed finally, hitting send before I could reconsider. Within seconds, my brother's reply appeared. "Thanks for understanding. We'll bring you back a souvenir." A souvenir. Like I was a colleague they were obligated to remember, not family being deliberately excluded. I tossed my phone onto the couch and moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown Seattle apartment. 32 floors up, the city spread below me, lights blurring through the rain. The view usually calmed me, reminded me of everything I'd built for myself. Senior VP at a tech investment firm by 35, respected in my field, financially secure in ways my family couldn't imagine. But tonight, all I saw was my own reflection. Dark hair pulled back in its typical neat bun, the tailored blazer I hadn't bothered to remove after work, the expression of someone who'd just been told they weren't wanted. My phone rang, cutting through my thoughts. Olivia, my best friend since college. "Hey, what's up?" I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Just checking if we're still on for drinks tomorrow. Ryan's band is playing at Emerald. Thought we could..." She paused. "Wait, what's wrong? I can hear it in your voice." 15 years of friendship meant there was no point hiding anything from Olivia. I've been uninvited from the family vacation. Apparently, I'm too difficult to have around. "Those absolute jerks," Olivia responded immediately, her loyalty one of the things I treasured most about her. "What happened?" I sank onto my couch, kicking off my heels. "Nothing specific? This time. Just the usual. I'm too intense, too opinionated, too everything." Daniel texted saying everyone agreed they needed a break from me. Everyone meaning your parents made the decision and your siblings fell in line? "You know how it works?" I sighed, grabbing the throw pillow and hugging it to my chest. Sophia would never contradict Mom and Dad, especially not with Greg backing her up. And Daniel hasn't stood up to them since the great career path argument of 2014. So what are you going to do with your vacation time now? Come to Bali with me next month instead? I hadn't thought that far ahead. The disinvitation's still fresh. I don't know. Cancel it, probably. We're in the middle of the Axiom acquisition and… Absolutely not, Olivia cut in. You've been working 70-hour weeks for months. You need a break with or without your ungrateful family. She was right. I'd been pushing myself hard, building the case for acquiring Axiom Technologies, a promising AI startup that could transform our investment portfolio. The deal was nearly complete, just waiting on final signatures. I'd earned this break. Maybe I'll book a spa somewhere, I said without enthusiasm, or catch up on sleep. Or, Olivia said, her voice taking on the tone that usually preceded her most outrageous suggestions, you could still go to Lake Tahoe. And what? Lurk in the woods watching them roast marshmallows? No, you could stay somewhere else. Nearby. Show them you're having a fantastic time without them. Live well, best revenge, all that. I laughed despite myself. That's petty. Sometimes petty feels good, Olivia countered. Look, I'm just saying, don't let them take Tahoe. From you too, you love it there. After we hung up, I found myself opening my laptop and searching for accommodations near Pine Crest Resort. The results were disappointing. A few dated motels, some questionable vacation rentals. Nothing that would provide the satisfying contrast to my family's experience that my wounded pride craved. But then, a listing caught my eye. The Lakeview Lodge, a small, elegant hotel just 2 miles from Pine Crest. The photos showed tasteful rooms, a well-appointed spa, and a terrace restaurant, with stunning lake views. More importantly, it was running a last-minute cancellation special for the exact dates of my former family vacation. On impulse, I booked their best suite. If I was going to be excluded, I might as well be excluded in style. The next morning, at work, I struggled to focus on the mountain of emails awaiting me. The Axiom deal was in its final stages, but my mind kept drifting to the family vacation, now just 4 days away, and the awkward reservation I'd made at Lakeview Lodge. Was I really going through with this? Spending my vacation time alone in Lake Tahoe just to prove… What exactly? A knock at my office door interrupted my thoughts. Richard Wong, my mentor and the firm's founding partner, stood in the doorway. Got a minute? He asked, already settling into one of the chairs facing my desk. At 62, Richard still maintained the energy and sharp intelligence that had built Westridge Partners from a small investment firm into a major player in tech venture capital. Always for you, I replied, closing my laptop. The Axiom team sent over the final valuation reports. He placed a folder on my desk. Impressive work, Becca. This acquisition's going to transform our AI portfolio. Thank you. The team put in a lot of late nights to make this happen. Myself included, though I didn't say it aloud. Richard already knew. He studied me for a moment, his expression shifting. Everything all right? You seem distracted. I considered deflecting, but decided against it. Richard had always been straightforward with me. He deserved the same. Family stuff, I admitted. Nothing serious. Serious enough to take your mind off a 9-figure acquisition. He leaned back, waiting. I sighed. I was uninvited from the annual family vacation. Apparently, I'm too difficult to have around. Rather than offering immediate sympathy, Richard chuckled. You? Difficult? Never. When I raised an eyebrow, he added, determined yes. Uncompromising when it matters. Absolutely. Those are qualities that make you excellent at your job. My family might disagree with your assessment. Your family, Richard said carefully, from what little you've shared over the years, doesn't seem to appreciate what makes you exceptional. The simple validation in his words eased something tight in my chest. Richard had never met my family, but he'd heard enough stories over the years to form an accurate picture. "So, what's your plan?" he asked. "I booked a room at a hotel near their resort. I'm still going to Tahoe." I shook my head, suddenly embarrassed. "It's ridiculous, I know." "Not at all," Richard said. "Though I'm surprised you picked a hotel instead of looking at real estate." I blinked. "Real estate? Isn't that our business? Spotting undervalued assets and making strategic investments?" He smiled slightly. "I've stayed at Pine Crest. Beautiful location, terrible management, the kind of property that's probably bleeding money despite its potential." "You're not seriously suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Richard replied, standing. "Just making an observation." He headed for the door, then paused. "By the way, the Axiom closing documents won't be ready until next Wednesday. You should take your full vacation as planned." After he left, I sat staring at the closed door, an idea forming that was either brilliantly satisfying or completely insane. It took less than an hour to find the information. Pine Crest Resort was indeed struggling financially, despite its prime location and loyal customer base. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A quick call to our real estate division confirmed the property wasn't publicly listed, but might be available for the right offer. By that afternoon, I'd requested a comprehensive valuation report and had my assistant, Tyler, arranging a confidential meeting with the resort's owner for the day after my family's vacation began. "Should I book you a room at Pine Crest for this meeting?" Tyler asked. "No," I replied, a sense of purpose replacing the hurt I'd been nursing. "I'll be staying at Lakeview Lodge." I spent the next 3 days in a flurry of preparation, both for my impromptu real estate venture and for the vacation itself. If I was going through with this admittedly outrageous plan, I needed to look the part of someone who could casually purchase a multi-million-dollar resort property. Olivia, delighted by the scheme, joined me for a shopping expedition that resulted in a vacation wardrobe far more elegant than what I would have packed for the family trip. "If you're going to power move, you need to look powerful," she insisted, holding up a white sundress that probably cost more than my brother made in a week. The morning I was supposed to leave for the family vacation arrived with unexpected clarity. Seattle's typical overcast sky had given way to brilliant sunshine, as if approving my decision. I loaded my luggage into my Tesla, placed the thick folder of Pine Crest financial documents on the passenger seat, and began the drive to Lake Tahoe. The journey gave me plenty of time to question my sanity. Was I really considering buying a resort just to make a point to my family? The rational part of my brain, the part that had guided my successful career, insisted this was a potential business opportunity, nothing more. The wounded part whispered about satisfaction and vindication. By the time I reached Tahoe in the late afternoon, the rational voice was winning, helped by the stunning scenery. The lake stretched before me, a perfect blue mirror reflecting the surrounding mountains. This place had always been special to me, family drama aside. If Pine Crest was a viable investment, why shouldn't I be the one to acquire it? I bypassed the turnoff to Pine Crest Resort, where my family would be arriving tomorrow, and continued to Lakeview Lodge. The boutique hotel, while smaller than Pine Crest, exuded a quiet elegance that immediately appealed to me. Modern design that complemented rather than competed with the natural beauty surrounding it. "Welcome to Lakeview Lodge, Ms. Mitchell," the receptionist greeted me. "We have you in our Cascade suite. Would you like a tour of the facilities before going up?" I accepted, following her through the intimate lobby to a lakefront restaurant where early diners were already enjoying the view, past a small but well-equipped spa, and finally to my suite. The space was perfect, a comfortable living area, bedroom with a king-sized bed, and a private balcony overlooking the water. Once alone, I stepped onto the balcony, breathing in the pine-scented air. From this vantage point, I could just make out the distinctive A-frame main lodge of Pine Crest in the distance. My family would be gathering there tomorrow evening for their traditional first-night dinner, sharing stories and inside jokes while pointedly not mentioning my absence. The thought stung less than expected. For the first time, I was approaching Tahoe on my terms, not as the difficult daughter, the argumentative sister, but as Rebecca Mitchell, successful businesswoman considering a significant investment. My phone chimed with an email from Tyler, confirming my meeting with Victor Sanderson, Pine Crest's owner, the day after tomorrow. Everything was set. I'd spend tomorrow exploring the area and finalizing my approach, then meet Sanderson with a clear understanding of what his property was worth and what it could become. I ordered room service rather than dining in the restaurant, spreading the fee. Pine Crest documents across the suite's dining table as I ate. The resort's financials told a clear story: declining revenue despite consistent occupancy, increasing operational costs, and deferred maintenance creating a cycle of customer dissatisfaction. Classic signs of absent ownership and poor management. Yet the property itself was extraordinary. 200 acres of prime lakefront land, historic main buildings dating back to the 1930s, and loyal multi-generational guests who returned year after year despite the growing issues. With the right investment and vision, Pine Crest could be transformed from a fading resort into a world-class destination. I fell asleep that night with renovation plans dancing through my head, the hurt of rejection, temporarily overshadowed by the excitement of opportunity. The next morning, the official start of what should have been my family vacation, dawned bright and clear. I dressed in one of my new purchases, a casual but expensive-looking outfit perfect for a day of reconnaissance, and headed to breakfast on the lodge's terrace. As I sipped my coffee, looking out over the sparkling lake, my phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "We're on our way. Kids are so excited. Wish you could have made it this year." The casual lie sent a fresh wave of anger through me. Wish you could have made it, as if my absence was due to scheduling conflicts rather than their deliberate exclusion. I considered not responding, but pettiness won out. "Enjoy Pine Crest," I wrote back. "I'm actually in Tahoe too, staying at Lakeview Lodge. Perhaps we can meet for lunch one day." I watched the typing indicator appear, disappear, and reappear several times before her response finally came through. "You're here? Why?" "I had the time off already. Decided to use it," I replied simply. She didn't respond immediately, and I imagined her frantically texting the rest of the family, their carefully planned Becca-free vacation suddenly complicated by my proximity. The thought brought a smile to my face as I finished my breakfast and prepared for the day ahead. I found myself opening my laptop and searching for accommodations near Pine Crest Resort. The results were disappointing. A few dated motels, some questionable vacation rentals. Nothing that would provide the satisfying contrast to my family's experience that my wounded pride craved. But then, a listing caught my eye. The Lakeview Lodge, a small, elegant hotel just 2 miles from Pine Crest. The photos showed tasteful rooms, a well-appointed spa, and a terrace restaurant with stunning lake views. More importantly, it was running a last-minute cancellation special for the exact dates of my former family vacation. On impulse, I booked their best suite. If I was going to be excluded, I might as well be excluded in style. The next morning, at work, I struggled to focus on the mountain of emails awaiting me. The Axiom deal was in its final stages, but my mind kept drifting to the family vacation, now just 4 days away, and the awkward reservation I'd made at Lakeview Lodge. Was I really going through with this? Spending my vacation time alone in Lake Tahoe just to prove… what, exactly? A knock at my office door interrupted my thoughts. Richard Wong, my mentor and the firm's founding partner, stood in the doorway. "Got a minute?" he asked, already settling into one of the chairs facing my desk. At 62, Richard still maintained the energy and sharp intelligence that had built Westridge Partners from a small investment firm into a major player in tech venture capital. "Always for you," I replied, closing my laptop. The Axiom team sent over the final valuation reports. He placed a folder on my desk. "Impressive work, Becca. This acquisition's going to transform our AI portfolio." "Thank you." The team put in a lot of late nights to make this happen. Myself included, though I didn't say it aloud. Richard already knew. He studied me for a moment, his expression shifting. "Everything all right? You seem distracted." I considered deflecting but decided against it. Richard had always been straightforward with me. He deserved the same. "Family stuff," I admitted. "Nothing serious." "Serious enough to take your mind off a 9-figure acquisition." He leaned back, waiting. I sighed. I was uninvited from the annual family vacation. Apparently, I'm too difficult to have around. Rather than offering immediate sympathy, Richard chuckled. "You? Difficult? Never." When I raised an eyebrow, he added, "Determined? Yes. Uncompromising when it matters, absolutely. Those are qualities that make you excellent at your job. My family might disagree with your assessment." "Your family?" Richard said carefully. "From what little you've shared over the years, doesn't seem to appreciate what makes you exceptional." The simple validation in his words eased something tight in my chest. Richard had never met my family, but he'd heard enough stories over the years to form an accurate picture. "So what's your plan?" he asked. "I booked a room at a hotel near their resort. I'm still going to Tahoe." I shook my head, suddenly embarrassed. "It's ridiculous, I know." "Not at all," Richard said. "Though I'm surprised you picked a hotel instead of looking at real estate." I blinked. "Real estate? Isn't that our business? Spotting undervalued assets and making strategic investments?" He smiled slightly. "I've stayed at Pine Crest. Beautiful location, terrible management. The kind of property that's probably bleeding money despite its potential." "You're not seriously suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Richard replied, standing. "Just making an observation." He headed for the door, then paused. "By the way, the Axiom closing documents won't be ready until next Wednesday. You should take your full vacation as planned." After he left, I sat staring at the closed door, an idea forming that was either brilliantly satisfying or completely insane. It took less than an hour to find the information. Pine Crest Resort was indeed struggling financially, despite its prime location and loyal customer base. A quick call to our real estate division confirmed the property wasn't publicly listed, but might be available for the right offer. By that afternoon, I'd requested a comprehensive valuation report and had my assistant, Tyler, arranging a confidential meeting with the resort's owner for the day after my family's vacation began. "Should I book you a room at Pine Crest for this meeting?" Tyler asked. "No," I replied, a sense of purpose replacing the hurt I'd been nursing. "I'll be staying at Lakeview Lodge." I spent the next 3 days in a flurry of preparation, both for my impromptu real estate venture and for the vacation itself. If I was going through with this admittedly outrageous plan, I needed to look the part of someone who could casually purchase a multi-million-dollar resort property. Olivia, delighted by the scheme, joined me for a shopping expedition that resulted in a vacation wardrobe far more elegant than what I would have packed for the family trip. "If you're going to power move, you need to look powerful," she insisted, holding up a white sundress that probably cost more than my brother made in a week. The morning I was supposed to leave for the family vacation arrived with unexpected clarity. Seattle's typical overcast sky had given way to brilliant sunshine, as if approving my decision. I loaded my luggage into my Tesla, placed the thick folder of Pine Crest financial documents on the passenger seat, and began the drive to Lake Tahoe. The journey gave me plenty of time to question my sanity. Was I really considering buying a resort just to make a point to my family? The rational part of my brain, the part that had guided my successful career, insisted this was a potential business opportunity, nothing more. The wounded part whispered about satisfaction and vindication. By the time I reached Tahoe in the late afternoon, the rational voice was winning, helped by the stunning scenery. The lake stretched before me, a perfect blue mirror reflecting the surrounding mountains. This place had always been special to me, family drama aside. If Pine Crest was a viable investment, why shouldn't I be the one to acquire it? I bypassed the turnoff to Pine Crest Resort, where my family would be arriving tomorrow, and continued to Lakeview Lodge. The boutique hotel, while smaller than Pine Crest, exuded a quiet elegance that immediately appealed to me. Modern design that complemented rather than competed with the natural beauty surrounding it. "Welcome to Lakeview Lodge, Ms. Mitchell," the receptionist greeted me. "We have you in our Cascade suite. Would you like a tour of the facilities before going up?" I accepted, following her through the intimate lobby to a lakefront restaurant where early diners were already enjoying the view, past a small but well-equipped spa, and finally to my suite. The space was perfect, a comfortable living area, bedroom with a king-sized bed, and a private balcony overlooking the water. Once alone, I stepped onto the balcony, breathing in the pine-scented air. From this vantage point, I could just make out the distinctive A-frame main lodge of Pine Crest in the distance. My family would be gathering there tomorrow evening for their traditional first-night dinner, sharing stories and inside jokes while pointedly not mentioning my absence. The thought stung less than expected. For the first time, I was approaching Tahoe on my terms, not as the difficult daughter, the argumentative sister, but as Rebecca Mitchell, successful businesswoman considering a significant investment. My phone chimed with an email from Tyler, confirming my meeting with Victor Sanderson, Pine Crest's owner, the day after tomorrow. Everything was set. I'd spend tomorrow exploring the area and finalizing my approach, then meet Sanderson with a clear understanding of what his property was worth and what it could become. I ordered room service rather than dining in the restaurant, spreading the Pine Crest documents across the suite's dining table as I ate. The resort's financials told a clear story: declining revenue despite consistent occupancy, increasing operational costs, and deferred maintenance creating a cycle of customer dissatisfaction. Classic signs of absent ownership and poor management. Yet the property itself was extraordinary. 200 acres of prime lakefront land, historic main buildings dating back to the 1930s, and loyal, multi-generational guests who returned year after year despite the growing issues. With the right investment and vision, Pine Crest could be transformed from a fading resort into a world-class destination. I fell asleep that night with renovation plans dancing through my head, the hurt of rejection temporarily overshadowed by the excitement of opportunity. The next morning, the official start of what should have been my family vacation, dawned bright and clear. I dressed in one of my new purchases, a casual but expensive-looking outfit perfect for a day of reconnaissance, and headed to breakfast on the lodge's terrace. As I sipped my coffee, looking out over the sparkling lake, my phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "We're on our way. Kids are so excited. Wish you could have made it this year." The casual lie sent a fresh wave of anger through me. Wish you could have made it, as if my absence was due to scheduling conflicts rather than their deliberate exclusion. I considered not responding, but pettiness won out. "Enjoy Pine Crest," I wrote back. "I'm actually in Tahoe too, staying at Lakeview Lodge. Perhaps we can meet for lunch one day." I watched the typing indicator appear, disappear, and reappear several times before her response finally came through. "You're here? Why?" I had the time off already. Decided to use it, I replied simply. She didn't respond immediately, and I imagined her frantically texting the rest of the family, their carefully planned Becca-free vacation suddenly complicated by my proximity. The thought brought a smile to my face as I finished my breakfast and prepared for the day ahead. My plan for the day was simple: Explore Pine Crest Resort as a potential investor rather than a familiar guest. I'd visited annually for 15 years, but had never really looked at the property with a critical eye. Today I would see everything: the good, the bad, and the opportunities. I drove the short distance to Pine Crest, timing my arrival for mid-morning, when my family would likely be settled in their cabins or already out on activities. The resort's entrance was as I remembered, a rustic wooden arch spanning a tree-lined drive. But the sign looked more weathered than I recalled, the gold lettering faded and peeling in places. The main lodge came into view as I rounded the final curve, its imposing A-frame structure both grand and slightly tired-looking in the morning light. Where once it had seemed the height of mountain luxury to me, now I could see the deferred maintenance Richard had mentioned. Gutters sagging in places, window frames needing repainting, landscaping overgrown rather than artfully rustic. I parked in the day visitors area and entered the lodge with the confidence of someone who belonged there. The interior was cooler, dimmer after the bright sunshine, with high wooden beams and a massive stone fireplace dominating the central space. A few guests milled about, some checking in at the reception desk, others studying activity boards or relaxing in the scattered seating areas. "Good morning?" I smiled at the young woman at the reception desk, her name tag identifying her as Megan. "I was hoping to speak with someone about hosting a corporate retreat here next spring. Is there a sales manager available?" The question was a perfect cover for exploring the property and asking detailed questions about its operations. Within minutes, Megan had summoned Lucia Garcia, the resort's events manager, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a professional smile and a tablet tucked under her arm. "Ms. Mitchell, I'd be happy to show you our conference facilities and accommodations," Lucia offered after I explained my fictional corporate retreat needs. "How many attendees are you planning for?" "About 75, I replied, a number large enough to justify seeing various parts of the resort, but not so large as to be outside their capabilities. We're looking for a mix of workspace and recreational opportunities." For the next hour, Lucia guided me through Pine Crest's facilities with practiced efficiency. I saw the main conference room with its panoramic lake views but outdated AV equipment, the smaller breakout rooms that could benefit from better lighting, the restaurant where my family had eaten countless meals, now showing visible wear in its furnishings. Throughout the tour, I asked questions that would be natural for a potential client, but would also give me insight into the resort's operations, staffing levels, occupancy rates during different seasons, recent renovations, few, it turned out, and plans for future improvements, largely theoretical, according to Lucia's carefully worded responses. As we walked the grounds, I spotted familiar faces among the staff. Martin, the groundskeeper who'd been there as long as I could remember. Emma, who had taught swim lessons to Sophia's kids last summer. They nodded politely, not recognizing me in my business attire with my hair styled differently than my usual vacation look. "The property has such potential," I commented as we returned to the main lodge. "The location is unbeatable." Lucia's professional smile faltered just slightly. "Pine Crest has a special charm. Many of our guests have been coming for generations." "Like the family that just checked into cabins 7, 8, and 9, I said casually, knowing exactly where my family always stayed. "Oh, the Mitchells?" Lucia brightened. "Yes, they're annual guests. Very nice family." I bit back a laugh at being described as very nice by someone who'd never met me. Do they usually come as a larger group? I thought I remembered more cabins being reserved under that name in previous years. A flicker of recognition crossed Lucia's face as she made the connection, her eyes widening slightly. "You're Rebecca Mitchell," I confirmed, extending my hand. "Senior VP at Westridge Partners, interested in potentially investing in hospitality properties. And yes, related to those Mitchells, though I'm exploring Pine Crest in a strictly professional capacity today." To her credit, Lucia recovered quickly. "Of course, Ms. Mitchell, is there anything else you'd like to see?" Actually, I'd love to speak with Mr. Sanderson if he's available. I understand he's the owner? Lucia hesitated. Mr. Sanderson isn't often on property. He lives in San Francisco and visits only occasionally. I'm meeting with him tomorrow, actually, I said. But I wanted to get a comprehensive understanding of the resort first. Background research, you understand. The surprise on her face confirmed what I'd suspected from the financial reports. The staff had little knowledge of any potential sale. I wasn't aware Mr. Sanderson was considering changes. Don't worry, I assured her, suddenly feeling a touch of guilt for the uncertainty I was causing. I'm just exploring options at this stage. If anything develops, I'm sure the current staff would be an invaluable asset in any transition. We exchanged business cards, and I promised to reach out with any additional questions. As I left the lodge, I caught sight of a familiar figure walking toward one of the lakefront cabins. My brother Daniel, carrying a cooler and looking relaxed in swim trunks and a t-shirt. I ducked behind a large SUV in the parking lot, not ready for that particular encounter just yet. Back at Lakeview Lodge, I carefully organized my observations from the morning's reconnaissance. Pine Crest's problems were even more evident than the financial reports had suggested. Years of minimal investment showing in everything from faded carpets to outdated technology. But the bones of the place were solid, and its setting was genuinely world-class. My phone had been suspiciously quiet since Sophia's earlier text. I imagined the family huddled in worried consultation about my presence in Tahoe, perhaps even wondering if I'd shown up just to make them uncomfortable. The thought brought a grim satisfaction, though I reminded myself that the potential acquisition was about business opportunity, not petty revenge. But was it? I couldn't honestly claim that my interest in Pine Crest was purely financial. The thought of owning the resort where my family vacationed annually, of having the power to reshape their experience, or even end it, held an undeniable appeal. I ordered lunch to my suite and spent the afternoon finalizing my approach for tomorrow's meeting with Sanderson. Based on the financial information and my first-hand observations, I determined a fair offer range and outlined a vision for transforming the property that would justify Westridge's investment. As evening approached, I knew exactly where my family would be, gathered in the main dining room at Pine Crest for their traditional first-night dinner. The temptation to make an appearance, to casually stroll in looking fabulous and unbothered, was strong. But the wiser course was to maintain my distance until after meeting with Sanderson. Instead, I dressed for dinner at Lakeview's own restaurant, choosing another of my new purchases, a sleek black dress that managed to be both elegant and understated. As I sat on the terrace, watching the sunset turn the lake to gold, a text arrived from Olivia. "Hotel spy report anything interesting yet?" I smiled, tapping out a response. "Found out the resort is in worse shape than expected. Meeting with owner tomorrow. P.S. No family encounters yet, though it was a close call. With Daniel." Her reply came quickly. "Playing long game. Smart. Keep me posted on tomorrow's meeting and whether you actually go through with this insane power move." The way she phrased it gave me pause. Was this truly insane? I was considering spending millions of dollars, leveraging my professional reputation and firm's resources, at least partly motivated by family drama. Put that way, it sounded ridiculous. But as I sipped my wine, looking out over the lake I'd loved since childhood, I reconsidered. Pine Crest genuinely was an undervalued asset with tremendous potential. The fact that it also happened to be my family's favorite place was merely a personal connection to a sound business opportunity. At least, that's what I told myself as I finished dinner and returned to my suite to prepare for tomorrow's crucial meeting. Whatever my mixed motivations, I was committed to seeing this through, to exploring whether Pine Crest could become not just a part of my past, but a significant piece of my future. I awoke early the next morning, my body instinctively following the vacation routine established over years of family trips despite the very different circumstances. The familiar Tahoe light filtered through the curtains, casting golden patterns across the unfamiliar walls of my suite. I stretched, feeling more refreshed than I had in months, the mountain air and distance from Seattle's demands working their magic despite the family situation. My meeting with Victor Sanderson wasn't until 11, giving me time for a lakeside run and a leisurely breakfast. I laced up my running shoes and headed out, following the shore path that connected various properties along this stretch of Tahoe. The morning was perfect. Cool air, birdsong, the occasional splash of fish jumping, the mountains reflected in the still water. About a mile into my run, the path curved around a small promontory, and suddenly Pine Crest's private beach came into view. I slowed, recognizing familiar figures already claiming their usual spots. My father, setting up his elaborate beach chair with attached umbrella and cup holders. My mother, arranging towels with military precision. Daniel, tossing a frisbee with Sophia's kids. I stopped completely, partially hidden by trees, watching this tableau of family life continuing smoothly without me. The scene should have reinforced my hurt, my sense of exclusion, but instead I felt a strange detachment. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than the unified front that had dominated my childhood and continued to influence my adult life. A runner approached from the opposite direction, and I quickly resumed my pace, not wanting to be caught staring. As I passed Pine Crest's beach, Zoe, Sophia's 7-year-old, looked up from her sandcastle building and waved enthusiastically, in my direction. "Aunt Becca!" she called out, her voice carrying clearly across the morning air. I waved back, smiling despite myself, then picked up my pace before anyone else could notice me. Zoe's simple greeting, free from the adult complications, swirling around us, warmed something in me. At least someone in the family was genuinely happy to see me. Back at Lakeview Lodge, I showered and dressed carefully for my meeting, a tailored summer suit in pale blue that conveyed both professionalism and appropriate resort casual. As I assembled the materials for my meeting, my phone chimed with a text from Sophia. "Zoe says she saw you running this morning. We're having lunch at the Boathouse restaurant at 1. Join us if you want." The invitation was clearly reluctant, probably prompted by Zoe's questions about why Aunt Becca wasn't joining them. I considered declining, but found myself typing, "Might stop by. Have a meeting nearby at 11 that might run long." Better to leave it ambiguous, particularly since I had no idea how the Sanderson meeting would go. I gathered my portfolio, slipped on sunglasses, and headed out to my car. Victor Sanderson had suggested meeting at a private residence rather than at Pine Crest itself, which aligned with my preference for discretion. I followed my GPS to an impressive lakefront property about 15 minutes from the resort, a modern, glass and stone structure that spoke of serious wealth. A housekeeper showed me to a terrace overlooking the water, where a man in his 60s sat working on a laptop. He stood as I approached, revealing an athletic build maintained despite his age, his silver hair expertly cut, his casual attire nevertheless suggesting significant cost. "Ms. Mitchell, welcome," he said, extending his hand. "Victor Sanderson. Your reputation precedes you." "All good things, I hope," I replied, matching his firm handshake. "Westridge Partners doesn't make many mistakes in their senior appointments," he said with a slight smile. "Coffee? Or something cold, perhaps?" I accepted an iced tea, and we settled into comfortable chairs facing the lake. For several minutes, we engaged in the expected pleasantries, comments on the perfect weather, mutual acquaintances in the financial world, the beauty of Lake Tahoe. Sanderson was smooth, practiced, clearly accustomed to high-level negotiations. "So," he said finally, setting aside his drink, "your assistant mentioned an interest in Pine Crest. I admit I'm curious what brings Westridge to my small resort." "Not so small," I countered. 200 acres of prime Tahoe lakefront, historic buildings, a loyal customer base. Pine Crest has significant untapped potential. Sanderson's expression revealed nothing. Potential requires investment. Pine Crest has been adequate as a passive holding in my portfolio. Adequate but declining, I said, opening my portfolio and extracting several key charts. Revenue has dropped 8% year over year for the past 3 years, while expenses have increased 12%. Customer satisfaction metrics show a concerning downward trend. The property requires at least $4 million in deferred maintenance just to maintain current standards, let alone improve. He raised an eyebrow, impressed or annoyed by my homework. I couldn't tell which. You've been thorough. I don't waste my time or others on superficial analyses, I said. Pine Crest is a gem in need of polishing, Mr. Sanderson. Westridge specializes in recognizing undervalued assets with strong fundamentals. And you believe Pine Crest qualifies? I do. The location alone justifies significant investment. The architectural heritage of the main buildings would be impossible to replicate today, given current building restrictions. And unlike many newer properties, Pine Crest has what developers call good bones, thoughtful original design that can be enhanced rather than replaced. Sanderson leaned back, studying me with new interest. May I ask what sparked your interest specifically in Pine Crest? There are several Tahoe properties on the market currently. This was the tricky question I'd prepared for. Complete honesty wasn't strategically sound, but I needed enough truth to be convincing. I've visited Pine Crest for many years. I said carefully. My family vacations there annually. I've watched its gradual decline firsthand while recognizing its enduring appeal. When searching for hospitality investments for Westridge's portfolio, it was a natural property to consider. Ah, Sanderson nodded. Personal connection combined with professional opportunity. That explains your detailed knowledge of the resort. Does it concern you? I asked directly. My familiarity with the property? He considered this. Not necessarily. It might even be an advantage, assuming your emotional attachment doesn't cloud your business judgment. I assure you, Mr. Sanderson, Westridge's investment criteria are rigorous and data-driven. Personal sentiment doesn't factor into our valuations. This wasn't entirely true, of course. My personal connection to Pine Crest had absolutely initiated this exploration, though the business case had proven stronger than I'd initially expected. So, Sanderson said, what exactly are you proposing? I outlined the vision I'd developed, maintaining Pine Crest's historic character while modernizing its facilities, enhancing the guest experience, expanding seasonal offerings to reduce the resort's heavy dependence on summer revenue. The investment required would be substantial, but the projected returns justified the risk. And what valuation are you suggesting for the current property? Sanderson asked, the casual tone not masking the fundamental question at the heart of any potential deal. I named a figure that my research indicated was fair, perhaps slightly generous given the deferred maintenance, but not excessively so. Sanderson's poker face didn't reveal whether he found it insulting or intriguing. That's significantly below what Pine Crest would command on the open market, he said finally. If that were true, Mr. Sanderson, you'd have listed it already, I countered smoothly. The figure I've proposed reflects the property's current condition and performance, not its potential. Westridge would be assuming considerable risk and investing substantial capital to realize that potential. He nodded slowly, then glanced at his watch. You've given me much to consider, Ms. Mitchell. I appreciate your thoroughness and candor. I have another engagement now, but I'd like to continue this conversation. Perhaps dinner tomorrow? I'll have my assistant send details. I agreed, recognizing that a second meeting was a positive sign regardless of the eventual outcome. As we stood to conclude our meeting, Sanderson asked, "Will you be staying in the area long?" "Through the week," I replied. "I'm at Lakeview Lodge." "Ah, Martin's place," Sanderson said, referring to Lakeview's owner. he's done well with a much smaller property. Proof that size isn't everything in the hospitality business. We shook hands, and I departed with the cautious optimism that comes from a promising but inconclusive first meeting. In the car, I checked the time, 12:40. The family lunch at the boathouse would be starting soon. Did I really want to walk into that potential minefield before digesting the Sanderson meeting? Yes, I decided. If nothing else, it would be useful to observe Pine Crest's food service operation firsthand. And if my appearance happened to disrupt my family's carefully Becca-free vacation, well, that was just an added benefit. The boathouse restaurant sat at the edge of Pine Crest's marina, a rustic structure with large windows overlooking the lake and the resort's small fleet of rental boats. As I approached, I could see my family already seated at their usual table on the deck, the same configuration we'd maintained for years. My parents facing the lake, Sophia and Greg with their backs to the water, the kids on either end, and an empty chair where I would normally sit. No, not empty today. Daniel's girlfriend Jamie occupied my usual spot, looking uncomfortable in the role of replacement daughter. The sight gave me a strange satisfaction. They'd tried to substitute me, but it clearly wasn't working seamlessly. I paused at the hostess stand, suddenly questioning my decision. Was this petty? Absolutely. Was it beneath me? Probably. Was I going to do it anyway? Yes. Yes, I was. I believe my family has a table, I told the hostess. The Mitchells? She smiled and led me toward the deck. My mother saw me first, her conversation with my father halting mid-sentence, her eyes widening in surprise. The reaction rippled around the table, Daniel turning to see what had caused our mother's expression, Sophia straightening in her seat, Greg's face settling into the careful neutrality he adopted during family tensions. Only the children seemed genuinely pleased to see me. Zoe bounced in her seat, waving frantically, while Mason, Sophia's 10-year-old, grinned and shifted to make room. "Aunt Becca," Zoe called out. "You came. I saved you dessert from breakfast, a chocolate muffin. It's in our cabin." "That's very sweet, honey," I said, genuinely touched by her enthusiasm. "I'll have to come by to get it later." An awkward silence fell as the adults registered my presence. My father recovered first. "Rebecca," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "We didn't expect you to join us." "Sophia invited me," I replied, enjoying the quick glare my father shot at my sister. "I was in the area for a meeting and thought I'd stop by." "Well," my mother said with forced brightness. "How nice, we can pull up another chair." The hostess, sensing the tension, quickly arranged an additional place setting between Mason and Jamie, who looked relieved to no longer be sitting in my spot. "So," Daniel said as I settled into my chair, "you're actually vacationing in Tahoe, too? Bit of a coincidence." The challenge in his tone was unmistakable. I met his gaze directly. Not a coincidence at all. I had the time off already arranged, and I've always loved Tahoe. Why waste the opportunity? "And you're staying at Lakeview, was it?" my mother asked, her tone suggesting she'd never heard of a place that was literally visible from Pine Crest's beach. "Yes, it's lovely. Smaller than Pine Crest, but more updated. The service is exceptional." A waiter arrived to take my drink order, temporarily diffusing the tension. Mason immediately launched into an excited description of the fish he'd caught that morning, complete with expansive hand gestures indicating its supposedly massive size. "It was this big," he insisted, arms spread wide. "More like this," Grega corrected good-naturedly, showing a much more modest span with his hands. The familiar family dynamic unfolded around me. My father dominating the conversation, my mother supporting his pronouncements, Sophia managing her children while occasionally exchanging meaningful glances with Greg, Daniel alternating between contributing and retreating into his phone. It was as if the script had been written years ago. With each of us assigned roles we continued to play unquestioningly. Except today, I wasn't following my usual script. The peacemaker, the one who smoothed over tensions, who rarely challenged our father directly to avoid the inevitable family drama that would follow. Today, I was Rebecca Mitchell, Senior VP at Westridge Partners, potential owner of the very resort where we sat. "So, Rebecca," my father said finally, using my full name as he always did when preparing to pass judgment. "Daniel mentioned you're working on some sort of acquisition? Another tech company?" The dismissive, "some sort of," was typical. He'd never fully understood or respected my career, despite my success. My father, Harold Mitchell, had built a respectable accounting practice in Portland, where predictability and stability were prized above all. My choice to enter the volatile world of venture capital had always mystified him. "Actually," I replied, sipping my iced tea, "I'm exploring hospitality investments at the moment, diversifying our portfolio." "Hotels?" my mother asked, genuinely surprised. "That seems different for you." "Different can be good," I said mildly. "Speaking of which, how's the food here this year? Still serving the same menu they've had since 2010? My father frowned at the criticism of his beloved Pine Crest. "There's something to be said for consistency, Rebecca. Not everything needs constant changing." The irony of him saying this to me after I'd been excluded for being difficult wasn't lost on anyone at the table. An uncomfortable silence fell, broken only by the sounds of Mason scraping the last bits of macaroni and cheese from his plate. "Actually," Jamie said hesitantly, "I was just saying to Daniel earlier that it might be nice if they updated their vegetarian options. There's only so many times you can eat the same pasta primavera." I shot her a grateful smile, which she returned tentatively. Perhaps Jamie wasn't just a replacement daughter, but an actual ally in making gentle changes to the Mitchell family dynamic. "Well," my father harumphed, "I'm sure the resort knows what their customers want better than we do." An opening too perfect to resist. "Actually, that's one of Pine Crest's problems," I said conversationally. "Their customer feedback systems are outdated, and they don't actively solicit or track guest suggestions. It's contributing to their declining satisfaction metrics." All eyes turned to me. "How would you know that?" Sophia asked. I smiled. "Professional interest. I toured the property yesterday." "You were here yesterday?" Daniel demanded. "Spying on us?" "Don't be dramatic, Daniel," I replied coolly. "I was here conducting due diligence. You hadn't even arrived yet." "Due diligence?" My father's eyes narrowed. "Rebecca, what exactly are you up to?" I considered my response carefully. The Sanderson meeting had gone well, but nothing was finalized. Revealing too much now could be premature, even unprofessional. On the other hand, the opportunity to shake my family's complacency was too tempting to resist. Let's just say I'm exploring opportunities that would allow me to have a more influential role in the Pine Crest experience going forward. "You're trying to buy Pine Crest?" Sophia blurted, always the quickest to connect dots. All pretense of normal family lunch disappeared as 5 pairs of adult eyes stared at me in disbelief. Only the children remained oblivious, Zoe having wandered to the railing to watch ducks. Mason focused on constructing an elaborate structure with the sugar packets. "I'm evaluating Pine Crest as a potential acquisition for Westridge Partners," I clarified. "Nothing is decided yet. I had a preliminary meeting with the owner this morning." "This is absurd," my father declared. "You can't buy Pine Crest." "Why not?" I asked, genuinely curious about his reasoning. Because it's Pine Crest," he sputtered. "It's our place. It has been for 15 years. "And it could continue to be," I said reasonably. "Though perhaps with better food options, updated facilities, and a more responsive management approach." My mother reached for her water glass, her hand trembling slightly. "Rebecca, Please tell me this isn't some sort of revenge because we suggested you skip this year's trip. Suggested? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's an interesting characterization of what happened. We thought it would be easier for everyone, Daniel interjected. Last year was so tense and you decided I was the problem, I finished for him. So instead of addressing any actual issues, you simply removed me from the equation. Very elegant solution. See? Daniel gestured toward me. This is exactly the kind of drama we were trying to avoid. I laughed, unable to help myself. The irony is incredible. You create drama by uninviting me from a family vacation, then claim you did it to avoid drama. Greg, who had remained silent throughout most of the exchange, suddenly spoke up. Maybe we should all take a breath. This is supposed to be a vacation. Excellent point, Greg, I agreed, standing. I shouldn't intrude any further on your drama-free family time. I placed my napkin beside my barely touched lunch. Enjoy the rest of your meal and your stay at Pine Crest, however long that arrangement might continue. With that parting shot, I leaned down to give Zoe and Mason quick hugs, nodded to Jamie, and walked away, feeling multiple pairs of eyes boring into my back as I left. Once in my car, I exhaled heavily, adrenaline from the confrontation still coursing through me. Had I gone too far with that final implication? Probably. Was it unprofessional to hint at the potential acquisition before anything was finalized? Definitely. But the looks on their faces, the shock, the disbelief that I might actually have the power to affect their comfortable routine, that had been priceless. For once, they couldn't dismiss me as the difficult daughter who needed to be managed. For once, they had to consider that I might actually have legitimate influence over something they cared about. As I started the engine, my phone rang. Richard, checking in on my vacation. I took a deep breath before answering, pushing aside family drama to focus on business. Richard, perfect timing, I answered. I just finished my meeting with Sanderson. The meeting went well, I told Richard as I drove away from the boathouse, putting distance between myself and the family drama I'd just ignited. Sanderson didn't immediately reject our valuation. He's invited me to dinner tomorrow to continue discussions. That's promising, Richard replied, his voice carrying the slight echo of a speakerphone in what was probably his home office. Any red flags? Nothing significant. The property needs more work than initially estimated, but that's reflected in our offer. Sanderson seems ready to divest. Pine Crest is underperforming in his portfolio. And your personal connection to the property? Is that complicating matters? I hesitated, thinking of the lunch I'd just fled. It's a factor, I admitted. My family's currently staying there. We had an interesting conversation just now. Richard's soft chuckle came through the line. I can imagine. Did you tell them about the potential acquisition? I may have hinted at it, I confessed. Not my most professional moment. We're all human, Becca. Just keep the business considerations primary going forward. Personal satisfaction can be a nice bonus, but it shouldn't drive the decision-making. Understood. His gentle reminder helped recenter me. I'll update you after tomorrow's dinner. After ending the call, I decided against returning directly to Lakeview Lodge. My encounter with the family had left me too restless, too full of competing emotions. Instead, I drove to a trailhead I remembered from previous vacations, changed into hiking boots I'd fortunately brought along, and set out along a path that climbed steadily up the forested hillside above the lake. The physical exertion helped clear my head. With each step up the increasingly steep trail, I tried to sort through my tangled motivations. Was I pursuing Pine Crest because it genuinely represented a good investment opportunity? Or was I primarily driven by the desire to assert power over my family, to force them to recognize me on my terms rather than theirs? The truth, I admitted to myself as I paused to catch my breath at a rocky outcropping overlooking the lake, was mixed. Pine Crest did have legitimate investment potential. The property was undervalued, the location unbeatable, the opportunity for improvement clear. But would I have noticed those factors if not for my personal connection? If not for the hurt of being excluded from a place that had been part of my life for 15 years? Probably not. And that wasn't necessarily wrong. Personal insight often revealed business opportunities others missed. Richard himself had built Westridge's early success on investments in companies he personally used and understood. From my elevated vantage point, I could see both Pine Crest and Lakeview Lodge, the two properties separated by a small wooded peninsula. Pine Crest's sprawling layout contrasted with Lakeview's more compact, thoughtful design. I could even make out tiny figures on Pine Crest's beach, possibly my family, continuing their vacation without me. The sight brought a fresh wave of hurt, but it was less sharp than before. Perhaps because now I was actively doing something, rather than simply reacting to their rejection. Whether or not the Pine Crest acquisition went through, I'd reclaimed my agency in this situation. I completed the hike, returning to my car sweaty but calmer, my thoughts more ordered. Back at Lakeview Lodge, I showered and changed, then set up my laptop on the suite's balcony to review the notes from my meeting with Sanderson and prepare for tomorrow's dinner. My phone had several missed texts, one from Olivia asking for updates, which I quickly answered, and to my surprise, one from Jamie, Daniel's girlfriend. Sorry about lunch, that was awkward. Coffee sometime? I'm curious about your work. I stared at this unexpected olive branch, unsure how to respond. Was Jamie genuinely interested, or acting as Daniel's spy? After a moment's consideration, I replied, "Coffee would be nice. Tomorrow morning at Lakeview's Terrace Restaurant, 9:30? Her response came quickly. "Perfect. See you then." Interesting. Jamie seeking separate contact suggested either genuine interest or strategic thinking on her part. Either way, I was curious to see what she wanted. As evening approached, I considered my dinner options. The prospect of eating alone in Lakeview's restaurant again didn't appeal, but neither did room service for the second night. On impulse, I decided to drive into the small town nearby, seeking a restaurant removed from both Pine Crest and Lakeview. I found a charming Italian place with outdoor seating overlooking a small marina. The hostess guided me to a corner table, partially shielded by potted plants but with a clear view of the water. "Rebecca?" I looked up, startled to hear my name, and found Lucia Garcia, Pine Crest's events manager, approaching my table with a surprised smile. "I thought that was you," she said. "Quite a coincidence." "Lucia, hello," I replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. "Would you like to join me?" The invitation was spontaneous but sincere. Lucia had impressed me during our tour, and I was curious to hear more about Pine Crest from someone who knew its operations intimately. She hesitated briefly before accepting. "Just for a moment. I'm meeting friends, but they're running late." Once seated, Lucia seemed unsure how to proceed, caught between her professional role at Pine Crest and this unexpected social encounter. I decided to address the elephant in the room directly. "I imagine my tour yesterday and my conversation with Mr. Sanderson today have created some questions," I said. Lucia nodded, her professional composure returning. "There are rumors circulating among the staff. Change always creates uncertainty." "Understandable. I want to assure you that if, and it's still very much an if, Westridge were to acquire Pine Crest, we recognize that the staff is one of its most valuable assets." "That's reassuring," she said, though her expression remained guarded. "Many of us have been with Pine Crest for years. Martin, our groundskeeper, has been there since the 1980s. "I know," I said. "He taught me to fish when I was 16. Lucia's eyebrows rose. "You've been coming to Pine Crest that long?" 15 years of family vacations, I confirmed. Though this year is different. Something in my tone made Lucia study me more carefully. Different how? I hesitated, then decided honesty might build the rapport I'd need if the acquisition proceeded. My family's at Pine Crest without me this year. We had a disagreement about vacation dynamics. Ah, Lucia nodded slowly. And now you're considering buying the resort where they're staying. That's quite a response. I laughed, appreciating her directness. It sounds absurd when you put it that way. But I assure you, the business case is sound, regardless of my personal history with the property. I believe you, she said. I've worked in resort management for 15 years. Pine Crest has so much untapped potential that it's almost painful to watch. Why hasn't Sanderson invested more in the property? I asked, genuinely curious. Lucia glanced around before answering, lowering her voice slightly. Mr. Sanderson has many properties. Pine Crest is sentimental for him. His parents owned it originally, but sentiment doesn't translate to active management or necessary investment. This insight into Sanderson's connection to the property was valuable. It explained his emotional detachment combined with reluctance to sell that I'd sensed during our meeting. What would you change about Pine Crest if you could? I asked. The question opened a floodgate. For the next 20 minutes, Lucia outlined thoughtful, specific improvements that closely aligned with my own observations. Modernizing guest rooms while maintaining their rustic charm, expanding shoulder season programming, updating restaurant offerings while keeping beloved signature dishes, investing in staff training and retention. Her passion for the property was evident, her insights practical rather than theoretical. I found myself mentally revising the post-acquisition management structure I'd been considering, with Lucia potentially playing a more significant role. I've monopolized the conversation, she said finally, noticing her friends entering the restaurant. But thank you for listening. Whatever happens with Pine Crest, it's refreshing to speak with someone who sees both its flaws and its potential. I've enjoyed our conversation, I said sincerely. If things progress with Sanderson, I'd value your continued input. After Lucia joined her friends, I finished my meal contemplating our discussion. The evening had provided unexpected clarity, confirming both the business opportunity Pine Crest represented and the genuine affection many felt for the property despite its current shortcomings. Back at Lakeview Lodge, I found an email from Sanderson's assistant confirming our dinner for tomorrow evening at an upscale restaurant in South Lake Tahoe, along with a brief note from Sanderson himself indicating he was intrigued by our conversation and looking forward to exploring possibilities further. Promising, though far from conclusive. I sent a quick update to my team at Westridge, requesting additional financial projections based on the new information I'd gathered about Pine Crest's operations and staffing structure. Sleep came more easily that night, the combination of physical exertion from the hike and emotional resolution from confronting my family, leaving me exhausted in the best possible way. My dreams, when they came, were not of family tensions, but of renovated cabins, happy guests, and balance sheets showing steadily improving returns. Morning arrived with perfect clarity again, Tahoe's famous blue sky unmarred by clouds. I dressed casually but well for my coffee with Jamie, curious about what Daniel's girlfriend wanted to discuss. The terrace restaurant was busy with breakfast service, but I'd reserved a quiet corner table. Jamie arrived precisely at 9:30, looking nervous but determined as she scanned the terrace, spotting me with visible relief. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, settling into the chair across from me. Up close, I could see the faint shadows under her eyes suggesting a restless night. "Of course," I replied. "Though I admit I'm curious about why you wanted to meet without the family." Jamie fidgeted with her napkin. "They don't know I'm here," she admitted. "Daniel would be upset." "Interesting. What can I help you with, Jamie?" She took a deep breath. Two things, actually. First, I wanted to apologize. For yesterday, that lunch was excruciatingly uncomfortable, and I felt terrible watching them gang up on you. The simple acknowledgement of what had happened was surprisingly touching. My family so rarely admitted when dynamics went awry, preferring to paper over tensions with platitudes about family harmony. Thank you for saying that, I said. It wasn't my finest moment either. I could have handled things more diplomatically. Jamie smiled slightly. Maybe. But it was kind of amazing watching them realize you weren't going to just accept being sidelined. She hesitated before continuing. They argued about it for hours afterward. Your dad was furious. Your mom was worried. Daniel kept saying you were bluffing. And what did you think? I asked, curious about this outsider's perspective on my family's dynamics. I thought they underestimate you, she said simply. They talk about you like you're still the rebellious teenager who chose a different career path than your father wanted, not the successful executive you've become. Her insight was surprisingly accurate for someone who'd only been dating Daniel. For what, 6 months? You see a lot. Jamie shrugged. I'm new, so I don't have decades of established patterns. And honestly, watching how they treat you makes me nervous about my own future with Daniel. If they can just decide to exclude their daughter after 15 years, what happens if I don't fit their mold someday? A fair concern, and one that explained her seeking me out. Daniel's different with you than he is with family, I offered. He seems softer. He is, she agreed, until your parents express an opinion. Then he folds faster than a cheap lawn chair. She grimaced. Sorry, that was harsh. But accurate, I countered with a small smile. So that's the first thing, the apology. What's the second? Jamie straightened, her expression shifting to something more focused. The second thing is actually professional. I'm an environmental architecture specialist, sustainable building design, specifically for hospitality and recreation properties. This was unexpected. Daniel had introduced her simply as Jamie. She works in design, with no further elaboration. That's fascinating, I said, genuinely interested. How did you get into that field? Graduate work at Berkeley focused on reducing carbon footprints of resort properties while enhancing guest experiences, she explained, her earlier nervousness replaced with confidence as she discussed her profession. I've consulted on projects throughout California and Nevada, helping properties transition to more sustainable operations without sacrificing luxury or comfort. And this connects to our conversation how? I asked, though I was beginning to see where she might be heading. If you're serious about acquiring Pine Crest, Jamie said, leaning forward slightly, it would be the perfect candidate for a sustainability renovation. The property has incredible natural advantages: south-facing roof lines for solar potential, access to geothermal possibilities, sufficient land for waste management innovations. With the right approach, Pine Crest could become a model of luxury, ecotourism. The passion in her voice was compelling, and her expertise clearly genuine. You've given this some thought, I observed. Since the first time Daniel brought me here last winter, she admitted. I've actually sketched preliminary concepts, just as professional exercises. The potential is extraordinary, but it would require an owner with vision and resources. Someone not like Victor Sanderson, I suggested. Exactly. Jamie pulled a slim portfolio from her bag. I brought some concept visualizations if you're interested. Obviously, this is just speculative and I'm not pushing for consulting work, but I thought, I'd love to see them, I interrupted, genuinely intrigued. For the next 30 minutes, Jamie walked me through thoughtful, professionally rendered concepts for transforming Pine Crest into a sustainable luxury resort. Her ideas were innovative yet practical, preserving the property's historic character while introducing modern sustainability features that would actually enhance the guest experience. "These are impressive," I said honestly when she finished. "Have you shared them with Daniel or my family?" Jamie shook her head. "I tried once, but your father said Pine Crest was perfect as it is and shouldn't be ruined with trendy green nonsense." She mimicked my father's dismissive tone perfectly. Daniel didn't disagree with him. I winced, all too familiar with my father's resistance to change and Daniel's reluctance to challenge him. Their loss. These concepts add significant value to the property, both environmentally and financially. "That's what I thought," Jamie said, carefully returning the materials to her portfolio. "Look, I don't know if you're seriously considering buying Pine Crest, or if that was just a power move to shake up your family. Either way, I wanted you to see that the property has potential beyond its current state, and that not everyone in the extended family thinks the status quo is sacred." I studied her with new appreciation. Jamie was clearly intelligent, professionally accomplished, and perceptive about family dynamics, all qualities my brother had not previously seemed to value in partners. "Thank you for sharing this," I said. "If the acquisition proceeds, I would definitely be interested in discussing these concepts further, professionally." Her face lit up. "Really? That would be amazing." "Just one question," I said, curiosity getting the better of me. "Won't helping me with Pine Crest put you in an awkward position with Daniel and my parents?" Jamie's smile turned slightly mischievous. "Maybe, but I've been trying to figure out if I have a future with Daniel and how I'd fit into your family. Their reaction to me having independent professional contact with you will be informative." "Smart woman. Well, for what it's worth, I think Daniel's lucky to have found you." "Thanks," she said, gathering her things. "I should go. They think I'm at the hotel gym." She paused before standing. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. Does it hurt, being the family outsider?" The question was surprisingly direct, and I found myself answering with equal directness. "Yes, it has for years. But it would hurt more to be someone I'm not just to fit their expectations." Jamie nodded thoughtfully. "That's what I was afraid of." She reached across the table to touch my hand briefly. "Good luck with Sanderson tonight. Whatever happens with Pine Crest, I hope it brings you some peace with all this." After she left, I remained at the table, contemplating our conversation. Jamie's professional insights about Pine Crest were valuable, but her observations about my family were perhaps even more so. She saw clearly what had taken me years to understand, that the family dynamics were fundamentally about control and conformity, with love and acceptance conditional upon following established patterns. I pulled out my phone and forwarded Jamie's contact information to my assistant, with instructions to keep her in mind if the Pine Crest acquisition proceeded. Regardless of what happened with her relationship with Daniel, her professional expertise deserved recognition. The rest of the morning passed quickly as I prepared for my dinner with Sanderson, reviewing financial projections and refining my approach based on yesterday's meeting and my conversations with Lucia and Jamie. Their insider perspectives had given me valuable insight into both Pine Crest's operations and its potential. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "We need to talk. Can I come to Lakeview?" I stared at the message, surprised by the directness. Sophia, the middle child between Daniel and me, had always been the family peacemaker, the one who avoided direct confrontation whenever possible. "I'll be here until 3, I replied. "Suite 412. Her response came quickly. "On my way." Interesting. I wondered which version of Sophia would appear at my door, the independent person she might have been, or the family ambassador carrying messages from our parents. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 20 minutes later, a knock came at my suite door. I opened it to find Sophia standing in the hallway, looking far less confident than her text had suggested. Her eyes darted past me, taking in the elegant suite with barely disguised surprise. "Nice place," she commented, stepping inside when I moved aside. "Different vibe than the cabins." "That's rather the point," I replied, closing the door. "Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine," she said, though she remained standing awkwardly in the center of the living area, clutching her purse like a shield. I gestured toward the sitting area. "Let's be comfortable if we're going to talk." She nodded and perched on the edge of an armchair while I took the sofa opposite. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of yesterday's confrontation and 15 years of complex sibling dynamics hanging between us. "So," I finally broke the silence. "You wanted to talk?" Sophia took a deep breath. "Are you really trying to buy Pine Crest? Or was that just something you said to upset Dad?" Direct and to the point, unusual for my typically diplomatic sister. "Both," I admitted. "The opportunity is genuine. Westridge is seriously considering the acquisition, and I had a promising initial meeting with Sanderson. But would I have noticed the investment potential if I hadn't been excluded from the family vacation? Probably not." She flinched slightly at excluded, but didn't dispute the characterization. "If you buy it, what happens to our family vacations?" "That depends on the family, doesn't it?" I countered. "I'm not the one who decided someone needed to be removed from the equation." "It wasn't like that, Becca," Sophia protested. "It wasn't about removing you." "Then what was it about?" "Because maybe it's better if you sit this one out." Sounds exactly like removal to me. She sighed, deflating slightly. "It was Dad's idea. He said last year was too tense, that you were clearly miserable being there, that maybe everyone needed a break. And neither you nor Daniel thought to question that? To maybe ask me directly if I wanted to come?" "You know how Dad gets when he's made up his mind," she said, as if that explained everything. And perhaps it did. Our father's declarations had always been treated as final in our family, his judgment rarely questioned openly. It had been that way since childhood, Harold Mitchell pronounced, and the family fell in line. "So Dad decided, Mom agreed, and you and Daniel went along with it," I summarized. The Mitchell family decision-making process, unchanged since 1995. Sophia had the grace to look uncomfortable. "When you put it that way, there's another way to put it?" She was quiet for a moment. "Jamie thinks we were wrong," she admitted finally. "She had a huge fight with Daniel about it last night after you left the restaurant. Said we treated you terribly." "I'm developing a better opinion of Jamie by the hour," I remarked. "She's different from Daniel's usual. Girlfriends," Sophia agreed. "More direct. Less willing to just go with the flow." She hesitated. "Kind of like you, actually." The comparison was unexpected, but not unwelcome. "We had coffee this morning," I said, watching Sophia's eyes widen in surprise. "She has some interesting ideas about Pine Crest." "You had coffee? With Jamie? Without telling Daniel?" "She's an adult making her own choices, Sophia, just like I am." Sophia rubbed her temples, clearly struggling with multiple competing loyalties. "This is all so complicated now. Why couldn't you just, I don't know, book a trip somewhere else? Why come here and potentially buy the resort just to prove a point?" The question irritated me, so typical of how my family viewed my actions, always, assuming my primary motivation was rebellion or spite rather than independent judgment. "Did it occur to you that Pine Crest might actually be a good investment opportunity? That I might have professional reasons beyond family drama?" "But you admitted it was both," she countered. "Yes, because I'm being honest. My interest was initially sparked by personal connections, but the business case stands on its own." I leaned forward. "That's the difference, Sophia. I can acknowledge mixed motivations while still making sound decisions. Dad declares his preferences and treats them as objective truth. Sophia didn't immediately defend our father, which was itself unusual. "So what happens now?" she asked instead. "I have dinner with Sanderson tonight to continue acquisition discussions. Beyond that, it depends on many factors." "And if you buy Pine Crest, will you kick us out?" The question was asked hesitantly, as if she was embarrassed to even consider it. The fact that she could think I'd do that stung more than I expected. "Of course not," I said sharply. "Despite what you all seem to believe, I'm not vindictive. Unlike some people, I don't exclude family members because they're difficult." Sophia had the grace to look ashamed. "I deserved that," she admitted. "For what it's worth, I was against uninviting you. I just didn't push back hard enough." "You never do," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "None of us do. That's the whole problem." Instead of defending herself, Sophia surprised me by nodding slowly. "Jamie said something similar last night, that we all just orbit around Dad's opinions and decisions like he's the sun. Smart woman, Jamie." "Yeah." Sophia looked down at her hands. "She also said Daniel's going to lose me someday if he doesn't develop a backbone where Dad's concerned." This blunt assessment of our brother, accurate though it was, made me laugh. I definitely like Jamie. A small smile flickered across Sophia's face. "She's growing on me too." The smile faded. "Are we really that bad, Becca? As a family?" The question felt genuine rather than defensive. I considered my answer carefully. "We're not bad people," I said finally. "But we have unhealthy patterns. Dad dominates, Mom enables, you mediate. Daniel acquiesces, and I've been pushing back since I was 12, which is why I'm the difficult one." "And now you might own Pine Crest," Sophia said, shaking her head in apparent disbelief. "Life takes weird turns." "That it does." We sat in silence for a moment, the tension between us not entirely gone but somehow transformed. Sophia looked around the suite again, her gaze settling on my open laptop and the Pine Crest financial documents spread across the dining table. "You're really serious about this," she observed. "I am." She nodded slowly. "I should get back. The kids wanted to go kayaking this afternoon." She stood hesitating before adding, Would it be okay if I told them you might stop by the beach later? Zoe keeps asking about you." The simple request, acknowledging my place in her children's lives regardless of adult tensions, was unexpectedly touching. "I'd like that," I said. "Maybe around 4? Perfect." She moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry, Becca, about how this all happened." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, genuinely appreciative of the rare, direct apology. After she left, I returned to my preparation for the evening's dinner with Sanderson, feeling strangely lighter despite the complexity of the family situation. Sophia's visit had been awkward but ultimately constructive. Perhaps the first conversation we'd had in years that didn't follow our typical script. The afternoon passed quickly. True to my word, I walked down to Pine Crest's beach around 4, where Zoe spotted me immediately and came running across the sand. "Aunt Becca!" she called, flinging damp arms around my waist. "Mom said you might come. Did you know I caught a fish? A real one. Grandpa helped, but I did the reeling." Her enthusiasm was infectious, her acceptance unconditional in the way only children's can be. Mason joined us moments later, eager to show me the intricate sand fortress he'd constructed near the water's edge. I noticed my parents watching from their beach chairs, their expressions guarded. My father offered a stiff nod, while my mother gave a small, uncertain wave. Progress, of sorts. Daniel and Jamie sat further down the beach. When Jamie caught my eye, she gave me a subtle thumbs up. Daniel, noticing the exchange, looked confused but didn't intervene. I spent 30 minutes with the kids, admiring Mason's sand engineering and hearing every detail of Zoe's fishing triumph. The normalcy of the interaction was refreshing, a reminder that family connections could survive adult complications. As I prepared to leave, my father approached, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Rebecca," he said formally. "Sophia mentioned you're having dinner with Victor Sanderson tonight." "That's right," I confirmed, curious where he was heading. "With this?" He cleared his throat. "I've known Victor for several years. Golf club acquaintances. He can be difficult in negotiations. Thought you should know." It was as close to helpful advice as my father was likely to offer. A small olive branch extended within his comfort zone of business discussions. "Thank you," I said simply. "That's good to know." He nodded curtly and returned to his chair, duty discharged. Another small step, though hardly a dramatic reconciliation. Back at Lakeview Lodge, I changed for dinner, choosing a sleek navy dress that conveyed professional confidence while remaining appropriate for an upscale resort restaurant. As I fastened my grandmother's pearl earrings, my lucky charm for important business meetings, I reflected on how much had changed in just 3 days. What had begun as a reactive, emotionally driven impulse had evolved into a genuinely exciting business opportunity. Whatever happened with my family, the Pine Crest situation had reminded me of my professional capabilities and judgment, independent of family approval or validation. The restaurant Sanderson had chosen was situated on a bluff overlooking the lake, its glass walls offering spectacular sunset views. He was already seated when I arrived, rising politely as the host led me to the table. "Ms. Mitchell," he greeted me. "You look lovely this evening." "Thank you," I replied, settling into my chair. "This is a beautiful location." "One of my favorites in Tahoe," he agreed. "The chef is extraordinary. I've taken the liberty of asking him to prepare a tasting menu, if that suits you." I nodded my agreement, and we fell into the practiced rhythm of business dining. Initial pleasantries, safe topics like the perfect weather, appreciation of the first courses as they arrived. Sanderson was clearly comfortable in this setting, his manners impeccable, his conversation poised. It wasn't until the main course arrived that he turned to business matters. "I've been considering your proposal," he said, swirling the wine in his glass thoughtfully. "Your valuation is lower than I might hope, but your vision for the property is compelling." "The valuation reflects Pine Crest's current condition and performance," I replied. "The vision represents its potential that would require significant investment to realize." He nodded. "Fair point. I've reviewed Westridge's portfolio. You've made similar transformations with other properties, though none in the hospitality sector specifically." "True, but the principles of recognizing unrealized value and executing strategic improvements remain consistent across sectors," I countered. "What we'd bring to Pine Crest is fresh perspective combined with respect for its heritage." "And your personal connection?" he asked, echoing a question from our first meeting. "You mentioned family vacations. I'm curious how that factors into your thinking." I considered deflecting, but opted for candor instead. "My family has vacationed at Pine Crest for 15 years. I've watched its gradual decline while maintaining affection for what it represents. That personal insight is valuable. I understand what current guests love about the property while recognizing what could be improved." "And your family's reaction to Westridge potentially acquiring the resort?" So he knew. Of course he did. Victor Sanderson hadn't built his fortune without maintaining awareness of relevant developments. Someone at Pine Crest had clearly informed him about yesterday's lunch confrontation. "Mixed," I admitted. "Change is always uncomfortable, but they'll adapt, especially when they see the improvements." He studied me for a moment, then smiled, slightly. "Your father implied a different perspective when we spoke this afternoon." I carefully set down my fork. You spoke with my father? Harold called me, Sanderson confirmed. We've known each other casually for several years. He expressed concerns about your interest in Pine Crest. Of course he had. My father, unable to control the situation directly, had attempted to undermine me behind the scenes, a familiar tactic from my childhood and early career. I see, I said, keeping my tone even with effort. And these concerns influenced your thinking about our proposal? Sanderson surprised me by chuckling. Ms. Mitchell, Rebecca, if I may, I've been in business for 40 years. I don't allow personal entanglements to dictate my decisions. Your father's concerns told me more about his discomfort with your independence than anything relevant to our potential transaction. The assessment was surprisingly perceptive. Then why mention it? Because family complications can affect business decisions, even unconsciously. I wanted to ensure your interest in Pine Crest is primarily business-driven rather than personal. A fair concern, I acknowledged. My initial interest had personal elements, as I've admitted, but Westridge's formal offer is based on sound financial analysis and strategic opportunity assessment. The numbers speak for themselves. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. Indeed they do, which brings me to my next point. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a folded document, sliding it across the table. My counteroffer. I opened the document, reviewing the terms carefully. The counter was higher than our initial offer, as expected, but not prohibitively so. More interesting were the conditions attached: a 2-year transition period during which Sanderson would retain minority ownership interest, protection for long-term employees, preservation of certain historical elements of the property. These terms are thoughtful, I said, genuinely impressed by the balanced approach. You care about Pine Crest's future. It was my parents' pride and joy, he confirmed. I may not have invested appropriately in recent years, but that doesn't mean I'm indifferent to its legacy. I'd rather sell to someone with vision than watch it continue to decline under my neglectful ownership. I appreciate your candor, I said. These terms are negotiable, but the framework is promising. I'll need to review with my team, of course. Of course, he agreed. I don't expect an immediate response. Take the time you need. As dessert arrived, our conversation shifted to broader topics. The changing nature of luxury hospitality, sustainability innovations Jamie had highlighted, the balance between tradition and innovation. Sanderson was knowledgeable and insightful, his perspectives adding valuable context to my thinking about Pine Crest's potential. By the time we finished our coffee, I had a clearer understanding of both the opportunity and the man across from me. Victor Sanderson wasn't simply divesting an underperforming asset. He was seeking a worthy successor for a property that held genuine meaning for him. I'll have a formal response to your counteroffer within 48 hours, I promised as we prepared to leave. No rush, he replied. I've owned Pine Crest for 30 years. A few days won't matter. He paused before adding, though I must admit, the possibility of resolution is appealing. I've been considering this change for longer than you might imagine. We parted with a firm handshake, the evening having advanced the potential acquisition significantly. In the car returning to Lakeview Lodge, I called Richard despite the late hour, knowing he'd want an immediate update. He countered, I told him once he answered. The terms are workable. I'm sending the details now for the team to review, but my initial assessment is positive. Good work, Richard said, the satisfaction evident in his voice. Any concerns? I hesitated, then decided full disclosure was important. My father attempted to intervene, called Sanderson directly to express concerns about my interest in the property. Richard's quiet sigh carried through the phone. Complicated when personal and professional intersect. Did it impact Sanderson's position? Apparently not. He seemed to recognize it as family dynamics rather than relevant business input. Smart man. Richard observed. What's your next step? I'll work with the team tomorrow on a response to the counteroffer. We're close, Richard. This could happen quickly. After ending the call, I continued to Lakeview Lodge, my mind racing with possibilities. The acquisition was moving from theoretical to probable, transforming what had begun as an emotional reaction into a significant professional opportunity. In my suite, I kicked off my heels and stepped onto the balcony, gazing toward Pine Crest in the distance. The main lodge was illuminated against the night sky, a few cabin lights visible among the trees. My family was there, continuing their vacation traditions without me. Yet something had shifted in the past few days. Sophia's visit, my father's awkward attempt at advice, Zoe's unconditional welcome, small openings in the family dynamic that had seemed so immovably fixed. And on my side, a growing recognition that professional success and family acceptance were separate matters, that one need not depend on the other. My phone chimed with a text from Olivia. Don't leave me hanging. How was Sanderson dinner? Are you buying a resort or what? I smiled, typing back. Looking promising. Counteroffer in play. Might actually happen. Her response came immediately. Holy shit! You're really doing this. Most epic response to family drama ever. So proud of you. Her enthusiasm made me laugh, but it also highlighted the absurdity of how this had all begun, with a hurtful text, message and wounded pride, now potentially resulting in a multi-million-dollar acquisition that could transform both Pine Crest's future and my professional portfolio. The next morning, I awoke to an email from Tyler with the team's preliminary analysis of Sanderson's counteroffer, along with suggested revisions to specific terms. Their assessment aligned with mine. The deal was workable with minor adjustments. I was reviewing their comments over breakfast when my phone rang. Daniel, to my surprise. Morning, I answered cautiously, unsure what to expect from my brother after the events of the past few days. Hey, he replied, sounding equally uncertain. So Jamie told me about your coffee yesterday. She mentioned she might, I said, waiting to see where he was heading with this. He sighed. Look, this whole situation is weird, Becca. Are you really buying Pine Crest? Because Dad's freaking out, Mom's stress baking enough muffins to feed an army, and Sophia keeps making cryptic comments about family dynamics. I'm in serious negotiations, I confirmed. Westridge sees significant potential in the property, and it has nothing to do with us uninviting you from vacation. His tone was skeptical. It started there, I admitted. But it's evolved into a genuine business opportunity. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Jamie says Pine Crest needs someone like you, someone with vision and resources. She's been sketching renovation ideas nonstop since your meeting. She's talented, I said. Her sustainability concepts are impressive. Yeah, she is, he agreed, a note of pride entering his voice. She also told me I need to think for myself more often instead of defaulting to whatever Dad thinks. This blunt assessment made me laugh. I definitely like Jamie. Yeah, well, she's pretty direct, Daniel said, a smile evident in his voice. Anyway, I wanted to say I'm sorry about how the vacation thing went down. We handled it badly. The apology, unexpected from my typically conflict-avoidant brother, was genuinely touching. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It means a lot. So, if you do buy this place, are you going to let us keep coming? He asked, only half joking. Of course, I assured him. Family vacations would continue, hopefully with everyone included. Good, he said, sounding relieved. Because despite all the drama, I do love this place, and the kids would riot if we stopped coming. After we hung up, I sat for a moment processing the conversation. 2 siblings reaching out in 2 days, both offering apologies of sorts, a significant departure from our usual pattern of glossing over tensions and returning to surface-level interactions. Perhaps this bizarre situation, me potentially buying, The resort where my family vacationed after being excluded had created just enough disruption to shift our entrenched patterns. Not a complete transformation, but cracks in the foundation of our dysfunctional dynamics. I spent the morning working with the Westridge team on our response to Sanderson's counteroffer, then sent the revised terms shortly after noon. His acknowledgement came quickly, indicating he'd review and respond by tomorrow. With business matters temporarily settled, I decided to visit Pine Crest again, this time openly, as both potential investor and family member rather than either-or. The decision felt symbolic of the integration I was beginning to find between these seemingly conflicting identities. As I walked from the parking lot toward the main lodge, I spotted my parents on the wide front porch, sitting in the oversized rocking chairs that had been Pine Crest fixtures for decades. They saw me at the same moment, exchanging glances before my mother raised her hand in a tentative wave. I approached with measured steps, curious about their reaction to my appearance after Daniel's description of their distress. "Rebecca." My father greeted me, his tone carefully neutral. "Didn't expect to see you here today." "I thought I'd stop by," I replied, equally neutral. "Beautiful afternoon." My mother shifted uncomfortably. "Would you like to sit?" she offered, gesturing to an empty rocker beside them. I accepted, settling into the chair and looking out over the familiar view, the sloping lawn leading down to the lake, the mountains rising on the opposite shore. How many afternoons had we spent just like this over the years, watching the changing light on the water? "Victor Sanderson called this morning," my father said finally, breaking the awkward silence. "He mentioned your dinner went well." I nodded. "We're making progress on terms." "So you're really doing this," he stated, not quite a question. "It looks that way," I confirmed. My father's hands tightened on the arms of his rocker. "Why, Rebecca? Is this really necessary?" The familiar dismissive tone, the implication that my decisions required justification while his were self-evidently correct, sparked the old frustration. But something had shifted in me over the past days. A newfound clarity about boundaries and expectations. "Pine Crest represents an excellent investment opportunity," I said calmly. "The property has tremendous untapped potential that aligns with Westridge's portfolio strategy. The fact that I have personal knowledge of the resort is an advantage, not a conflict." "And the fact that we vacation here annually?" my mother asked quietly. "That didn't factor into your decision?" I considered deflecting, but opted for honesty instead. "Of course it did, initially. Being excluded from a place that held 15 years of memories hurt, but that emotional response led to a legitimate business opportunity. Sometimes personal insight reveals professional possibilities others might miss." My father frowned. "You're saying you would have pursued this acquisition even if we hadn't? Adjusted this year's arrangements?" "Probably not," I admitted. I might never have looked at Pine Crest from an investment perspective. But once I did, the business case became clear. He nodded slowly, processing this. "And our future vacations here?" "Would continue unchanged," I assured them. "Well, not entirely unchanged. The facilities would improve, the dining options would expand, the service would be enhanced. But the essence of Pine Crest, what makes it special, would remain." My parents exchanged looks, some unspoken communication, passing between them. "Your sister mentioned some of the changes you're considering," my mother said cautiously. "They sound interesting." Coming from my change-resistant mother, this was practically enthusiastic endorsement. "Jamie has contributed some excellent sustainability concepts," I added, watching my father's expression carefully. "Her professional expertise in environmental architecture is impressive." To my surprise, he nodded. "She showed us some of her drawings this morning. Thoughtful work, respectful of the property's character while introducing modern efficiencies." This acknowledgement of Jamie's expertise and, by extension, an implicit recognition that change wasn't inherently negative, represented a small but significant shift in my father's typically rigid thinking. We sat in silence for a few moments, the conversation having reached a natural pause. It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation, but it was a beginning, an acknowledgement of new realities, of shifting family dynamics, of my autonomous professional identity. "The children are down at the beach with Sophia and Greg," my mother said finally. "They'd love to see you, I'm sure." The simple invitation, offering connection without demands, felt like a peace offering of sorts. "I'd like that," I replied, standing. "I'll head down now." As I walked away, my father called after me. "Rebecca." I turned, waiting. "Whatever happens with Sanderson, this is still your place too. We shouldn't have suggested otherwise." It wasn't quite an apology, but from my father, it was significant. Acknowledgement nonetheless. "Thank you," I said simply. Walking down the familiar path toward the beach, I felt a sense of completion forming. Not perfect resolution, but movement toward integration. The difficult daughter and the successful executive weren't separate identities, but facets of the same person. The family patterns weren't instantly healed, but were perhaps becoming more flexible, more open to evolution. My phone vibrated in my pocket, an email from Sanderson. "Terms acceptable with minor adjustments. Let's move forward. Congratulations on your acquisition." I smiled, slipping the phone back into my pocket without responding immediately. The official details could wait a few hours. Right now, I wanted to sit on Pine Crest Beach with my niece and nephew, watching the light change on the lake, creating new memories in a place that would soon be not just part of my personal history, but my professional future as well. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family had kicked me off their vacation for being difficult, and I'd responded by buying the very resort where they vacationed. It was perhaps the most dramatic power move of my career, one that had begun as wounded reaction but evolved into genuine opportunity. As I reached the beach and heard Zoe's delighted cry of, "Aunt Becca's here," I realized that sometimes the most surprising paths lead to exactly where we need to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.